So you're bored of splendens and you want to try something different. Something that is colorful, hardy, easy to keep, and most importantly, have a lot of personality. And I know what you're doing. You're picking one of these fish. A Cosina type, like a Handra, Uberus, Api, Persephone, and it's pretty obvious why. They're absolutely beautiful fish, but they're also absolutely not beginner fish, for various reasons which I won't really go into detail in this video. However, a beginner-friendly fish that is absolutely beautiful and fun to keep is Betta Antuta. I think people overlook this fish because they're kind of intimidated by it. Being that it's one of the biggest wild betta, I kind of understand. However, it does have some traits and characteristics that makes it an excellent fish for beginners and experts. So follow me as we take a look into the wild Betta Antuta. Betta Antuta is one of the largest mouth-brooding bettas. It belongs to the Unimaculata complex, making them very closely related to other large mouth-brooders like Palafinas, Oxalata, Patoti, and even Macrostoma. Despite them being one of the more popular large mouth-brooders, they're actually not that well scientifically described. From my knowledge, they come from the slow, sluggish forest streams in the Borneo rainforest of Indonesia, north of East Kalimantan, in an area known as the Bulungan Regency. And yes, believe me, it was pretty difficult to pronounce these words. Their habitats are best described as clear, slow-moving streams that are relatively shallow, with rocky bottoms filled with leaf litters and dead branches. It should look something like this. In their habitat, they fill the role of a top predator, eating pretty much anything that falls into the water that fits into their large mouth. This kind of explains why they're built kind of like snakeheads. That leads me to reason number 1. They are active and not shy. Most beginners can be turned off by how often they see their wild bettas, because for the most part, wild bettas are reclusive creatures. However, Betta Antuta are dominant predators in their environment, and they will swim out in the open and gobble up anything that fits into their mouth, making them entertaining to watch. This active behavior is why they quickly learn that you're not some big scary creature that are out to eat them, but a living god whose main purpose is to provide them with tasty food. And that leads me to reason number 2. They're so easy to feed. You see, these fish in the wild will feed on anything that's in the water or falls in the water. It doesn't matter if it's alive or dead. They will take a bite, and if it tastes bad, they'll spit it out. They also have huge mouths, so they're going to try to squeeze every millimeter of it with whatever they find inside. So what does that mean for beginners? Well, you don't have to hatch BBS, blackworms, or any live food. You can just straight up feed them fish pellets from day 1. This makes this fish idiot-proof for those that are worried that they need to feed them live food in captivity. Number 3, they don't really care about water chemistry. Now, I'm not saying to keep them in dank, polluted, dirty water, but they can live in soft water, hard water, and even water with high levels of nitrates. Though, I don't recommend folks keep them in the last condition. You see, people keep asking me, what kind of water should they keep them in? And the answer will always be, it doesn't matter. What does that mean for beginners? Well, it means you don't have to stress yourself out buying a RO system and getting that perfect soft water for tropical fish. These fish are highly adaptable to any water condition. I do, however, have some recommendations. And here they are. 1. Keep the temperature between 68 and 82, with the ideal temp at 73 degrees Fahrenheit. They come from flowing streams, so they prefer cooler water. 2. Don't worry about water hardness, TDs, or pH, just make sure the water is pretty clean. Clean water is always good, and make sure to dechlorinate the water if you're using tap water. You can always ensure that your water is good by having a sponge filter. Even if your water has high nitrates, they don't care that much. One of the things that makes them so forgiving to keep is their tolerance to nitrates. Still, you always want to try to keep the water clean. 3. Having some flow is good. You don't need a lot of flow, but flow from the sponge filter is good enough. Fish from slow-flowing streams always like to have good flow. It makes them active, and it gives them the best coloration. Number 4. If you have a compatible pair, they'll eventually breed. Unlike bubble nesters like Coxinas and Splendens, large-mouthed brooders like Antutas are very friendly towards females they like. Once a fish pairs up, it might not even matter how big of a tank you keep them in, they'll get along and breed. But the result is the same. You'll have more fries than you know what to do with. This is great because these fish, like many wild bettas, are considered highly endangered due to habitat destruction. The more people who can breed these fish, the better our chances of saving this unique species. Now that you know how awesome these fish are, I want to share with you some tips and tricks on keeping them in captivity. Although they don't need a huge tank, the bigger the tank, the better they'll be. After all, they are large fish. They can be over 5 inches long when fully grown. I recommend a 10-gallon to 20-gallon tank for a pair with mostly open space. Personally, I keep my fish in a bare bottom tank, but having substrates consisting of sand with small pebbles, as well as dead branches and some hiding space, is ideal. This is because it emulates their natural habitat, and that's always a good thing. It's important that you have open space for these fish. Remember that they are dominant predators. Remember that these are large fish. They can be over 5 inches long. This means that it is best to keep them in a species-only tank, because anything small enough to fit into their largemouth will pretty much be dinner. They're prone to external protozoan infections like velvet. This is particularly true if you get them from someone who doesn't quarantine their fish, and even more true if they are wild-caught fish. Velvet is extremely deadly to bettas and can result in death. Luckily, there are ways to deal with external protozoan infection, and that is adding 1 tablespoon of salt per gallon. Don't worry, they can tolerate very high levels of salt, and once it clears up, you can slowly remove the salt. For heavy infections, I made a video on curing velvet, so if you like, you should watch that video. Sometimes pairs don't get along, and it can cause pairs to fight, which can result in death. You can usually tell if a pair gets along or not by the way they interact with each other. If you notice that the males and females are flaring with open mouths, you need to separate them ASAP. You can try to get them to like each other by placing 2 tanks side by side so they can see each other, or have a bigger tank. A bigger tank with some hiding space would allow the less dominant fish to hide. Unfortunately, it is very difficult to know if the fish are going to be compatible or not. Eventually, especially in older fish, males and females do not fight like same-sex fish. Getting compatible pairs is probably the hardest thing for someone to do, and it can be a headache. But this is true of almost all bettas, except smallmouth brooders. Let's say you did get your fish to breed and the male is holding. What should you do? First, you need to take out the female. The female can stress males out, particularly if they are young pairs. This is because females always want to mate even if the male is holding. The male is going to hold the eggs for approximately 21 days. This is a long time, and this is when he is going to be weakest, because he won't be eating much. The time it takes for him to spit the fries is going to be based on the temperature of the water. It can take less if he is in warmer conditions. Once he spits, you need to let him rest. So what I like to do is move him to a separate tank so that he can fatten up again for 2 to 3 weeks. Putting him back immediately with the female might result in him holding again, and this can cause him to be further weakened and succumb to disease. As for the fries, they can immediately take baby brine shrimps, and once they get up to about 1/2 inch, you can start feeding them pellets. So what do you guys think of Betta Antuta? Would you like to keep a pair? Those of you who do have a pair, what is your experiences? Are they positive or negative? Let me know down below. I really would like to hear your opinion. And like always guys, thank you so much for the support. Don't forget that I'm having a 20% sale on premium Betta Antuta on my website, bwaquatics.com. Oh! And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at #BWAquatics.